You set?
Yep.
Okay. Well, Leigh, it's very nice to meet you, and I understand that you are the in charge of teaching writing.
Yeah, I do a lot of writing with the middle school and with the high school, and I'm the chairman of the middle school English department.
So you teach more than writing, I would imagine.
Right, I also teach literature.
Okay.
Which is one of the nice things at Norman Howard, because we have 3 periods a day for language enrichment. Students generally have 1 reading period, 1 period devoted just to writing, and then another period devoted to literature. So it's a very language-rich curriculum.
Okay. Let's start with writing. What are some of the problems that children bring to the classroom for writing?
Well, some of the problems that our students have, that other people have as well, even if they don't have learning disabilities, writing is one of the most complex things that you can do. It calls on a lot of working memory, because you have to remember what you want to say, you have to remember the rules of grammar, you have to remember how to spell things, you have to remember how to put a paragraph together, do your transitions, all of the other things. It's just a very complex process. So what we do is we really break it down into 6 steps. And for each step, we give the students some language, some questions that they can ask themselves so that they know if they're really attending to that step of writing.
Okay.
The strategy that we use is called Empower. And the first thing students do is they evaluate instructions. So they actually circle action words, underline keywords, and then paraphrase back what the instructions are. Because if a student doesn't understand what the process is or what the purpose is, they won't get the writing assignment correct.
So they have to repeat it back to you. Okay.
Okay, then we ask them to make a plan, and that's where we look at our thinking maps. I don't know if anybody else has talked about thinking maps, but these are a set of 8 different types of visual representations of 8 different types of thinking that were developed by David Hirely. And we use the thinking maps throughout the school. If you go in any classroom, you'll see the posters on the wall, and students know how to use the maps. We have software for it, so that's really one of our baseline strategies for writing and thinking. So we ask them to map out their ideas, then organize their ideas, color coding, numbering, however they might do that. Then they're going to make a draft. Then they're going to evaluate their own work using a self-editing checklist, and at the end they rework it.
Okay, so let's go back to the maps. Who did you say?
Dr. David Hirely.
Can you spell his last name?
Hyerlie, I think, but you want to check that.
Okay, so I'm asking because if anybody in our audience wants to look that up and check it out, it might be a good thing for them to
and
look at.
if you look on the internet for thinking maps, you'll find a lot of information.
Okay, and then we're going to go to the next step. After thinking maps, they have an action plan.
Right, and the strategy that we use is Empower. They have a checklist, and the checklist asks them to do certain things in each step of the writing process. And they check in with the teacher, as they're working through. If they have questions, they can have a conference with me, or I check at the end to make sure that they're on the right step.
So the checklist isn't something that they read and then follow. It's something that they have there while they're working and check it off as they complete each part of it.
Right, so they know where they are in the writing process.
Right, which is a wonderful way to organize it, especially for kids who can't organize things. That's one of the problems, I think, isn't it, with children with learning disabilities, is the organization that's required for writing, which is very intense.
And that's how thinking maps help, because it helps them organize their information.
Right.
And the nice thing is that a student only has to attend to one small chunk of the writing process at a time. So instead of looking at a blank page and saying, I don't know where to begin, they just think, oh, okay, well, what's my topic? All right, well, I know I want to write about the oceans. And then they do a little more talking, and they do some brainstorming, and then they refine that topic. So each step is just a small, discrete part of the process, and then it's not as daunting.
So then step 1 might be a little complicated. It's like, I don't know what I want to talk about, so let's brainstorm that.
Absolutely. And sometimes we brainstorm as a class, sometimes we brainstorm just one-on-one with a teacher's conference.
So then after that, then they do a draft. Is the draft next?
Then the draft is next, after they've kind of organized, so either using numbers or color coding or figuring out after the brainstorming, because they may come up with a lot of different ideas.
Oh, and haven't chosen one.
And so, well, even when you've chosen a topic, you may want to say a lot about it, and you may have to narrow that down. And so you're really looking at defining what you're writing about through a topic sentence or through a thesis statement. Okay. And then that's a limiting factor. Okay. So they're really focusing, like a camera focuses.
So first you identify what you want to talk about, and then you define the parameters.
Yes.
Okay.
And then you come up with ideas.
You're giving me ideas for my own writing.
Okay. Yep, you come up with ideas, and then you cherry pick from the ideas that you come up with, which ones you want to use. And then you number them or figure out how you're going to talk about them, what order you're going to talk about them. Then you use, and we have a very structured kind of paragraph approach with topic sentences, and our supporting information we call FREDs, facts, reasons, examples, and details. So for each one of those FREDs, there's a follow-up sentence, or they use textual evidence and go back to the book or a piece of informational text. Then transitions, finally a concluding sentence. So it's very structured, and that helps students.
But it makes for a very interesting piece of writing.
Well, and a cohesive
and
piece of writing.
To the point.
Right.
So that somebody reading it, so that you don't wander off and get lost, and somebody reading it can say, okay, this really tells me what I wanted to know.
Right. And in the middle school, most of what we do is we do, because we're teaching the students these skills. So we model a lot of these steps of the process using the smartboard, using a we-do approach. Students will work together. And so our plan is that by the time they're in high school, they know the process, they know the structure, and they can apply it to the content that they're learning in high school.
So these kids, when they get out of the lower grades, are better prepared to write papers than most kids going into college are today.
They should be.
That's
it varies
anyway.
It is the goal.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's one of the luxuries of having that writing period every single day. For a while, I did some extra teaching at Bryant and Stratton College, which is a college for...
it's business,
It's business college. Yeah. And I think that the students here at Norman Howard did have a better idea of how to put together a sentence, how to put together a paragraph, how to put together an essay, just because they've had all that practice.
How to put together a sentence. Tell me about the problems that you've seen where children have to actually learn how to put together a sentence.
Even in 8th grade, I do a quick review of the parts of speech because they're not necessarily automatic, especially after someone has spent 2 months in the summer not thinking about it. Then we talk about the requirements for a complete sentence, and then we do some practice, and we talk about how we can combine sentences. We talk about how we can look for run-ons. I think most of the run-ons I find are when a student uses a pronoun as a subject and they don't realize that it's a new sentence.
Oh, okay.
So that I, he, she, we, that can get them every time because they don't realize that that's a new subject-verb combination.
Okay. So. Okay. So now, what about, I'm sure we'll come back to writing, but what about, you do reading? So there's reading comprehension, and I guess the comprehension would be the really important part, wouldn't it?
It is, and in the middle school we looked at what students could do, and I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, realized that even discerning a main idea from a piece of informational text was very hard. So we looked at the strategies out there, and we kind of retrofitted one that we found called Unravel, which helps students kind of look at the text features first before they even start. So it's like a multi-pass reading. The first thing they do is they look at the text features, the captions, the pictures, the title, the subheadings, the vocabulary boxes. They make a prediction, what they think the main idea will be. They go through and they star the text features that they think are going to be the biggest help. They go through, they read it. They, again, annotate the text based on what they think the controlling idea of the topic is. And so then what we have them do to create a main idea is say, what's the broad topic, and then what's the controlling idea? What is this text telling us about that topic? So that helps. I mean, it's difficult, and inferential comprehension, you have to look for, some of the things that the author's not saying, and help students look for those different keys that will help figure out what the main idea is. But, again, it's a process, and students here get 2 periods a day, one in reading and one in literature.
So tell me about the difference between the reading class and the literature class.
Reading class will work on discrete reading skills based on where the students are. So there are a number of different programs, either phonetic programs or other types of programs that help boost decoding and fluency skills. And then the ELA class is the literature class, where we read books, discuss literary elements, kind of look at the themes and the life lessons there.
Well, there are some children, aren't there, who have a great deal of difficulty reading because the words won't hold still?
Right. We generally read the text aloud in class, stopping several times to discuss things and whatever questions the students have. So it's a very rich discussion.
So they have to read aloud.
Some do. I don't force any student to read aloud who doesn't want to.
Okay.
You know, because I don't want to scar them for life. And when students are ready, they'll generally volunteer to do that.
Okay.
And most of the reading that's done outside of class are smaller informational pieces where they can use the technology to text-to-speech to listen to it. So they have access that way. And then they use the Unravel checklist.
That sounds wonderful. So there was something I was going to ask you about the writing.
You gotta let her go.
You gotta let her go?
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to give a little guy a test accommodations.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, she was so succinct, I think we got it all in anyway. Yeah. Okay. So I do thank you so much.
Well, good luck in your project.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Bye. Thank you. Sorry about that. Sorry.